We're getting a look at the AFC playoff picture as it currently stands. The Chiefs, who are 12-1, with that win, they're locked in to a playoff spot. The Bills, they have clinched as well. Pittsburgh and Houston, currently the division leaders. We have Baltimore, the Chargers, in Denver, currently in the playoff picture. We just talked about the Dolphins, now sitting at 6-7. As it stands right now, they are currently on the outside looking in. And we have the guys with us, Douzable, Mike Renner, because we're going to talk not only AFC, but NFC and just the playoff picture in general in the NFL. And gentlemen, it feels like the Dolphins may be hitting their stride a little bit too late in the season. I don't know. I think they were right around a 14% chance to make the playoffs. Lige, I'll start with you. Based off of what you've seen on the field and how Tua's been playing, especially over the last couple of games, do you feel like there is any chance that they can make a run? It depends on other things, of course, but how are you feeling about Miami?
Miami has no shot. I'm just going to be honest. They have no shot. I love what I've seen from the offensive side. Tua Tagovailoa has been as good as any quarterback this year since coming back from the concussion. In regards to throwing with anticipation, he's the perfect quarterback for this Mike McDaniel system. But, Mike, there's a real issue on defense. I mean, this defense has been carved up the last 2 weeks. And if you can't stop anybody, and the Bengals are learning this the hard way, it's hard to win football games. Like, Tua Tagovailoa, look at the screen right there. 75 completion percentage. Like, that's tops in the NFL over the last 4 games. He's playing at an MVP level, but again, his defense isn't helping him out. They were down big in this game, and Tua was able to put a couple drives at the end of the game to get them into overtime, and then he was just strategical and surgical in overtime. You talked about it, Jacqueline, those 2 passes to Jonnu Smith on screenplays, and then he finds them on a deep over to win the game in overtime. But until this Dolphin team fixes their run game right, because right now they're one-dimensional in passing the football, and fixes their defense, they have no chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, the problem is the teams ahead of them. They're all darn good football teams, whether it's the Broncos, who have a top 5 defense, whether it's the Chargers, who have a top 5 defense, or the Ravens, who have a top 5 offense. It's like, pick your poison of the teams ahead of them. They're not going to lose enough games to let the Miami Dolphins back into this, unfortunately, even though the Miami Dolphins maybe look like one of the 7 best teams in the AFC right now. Unfortunately, with the Tua Tagovailoa injury, they were just too far behind the 8 ball.
All right, let's get to the NFC South here for a moment. Falcons had the tiebreaker over the Bucs for a hot second there, but now the Bucs have now taken the lead in the division. But when you look at the schedules, do the Bucs stay on top here, Lige?
I do believe so. They have a lot easier schedule going down the pike, right? We saw the Falcons the last few weeks. They've played some of the top defenses in all of football, and essentially that's why they brought Kirk Cousins in, to be able to win those games. But he looked like a shell of himself, right? And I mentioned this last week that I thought Raheem Morris has to take a hard look in the mirror and understand the temperature of his team, because it was one thing when they were tied for the division lead or even up, but now you're behind in the division, right? You got a guy in the top 10 in Michael Penix Jr. Kirk Cousins doesn't look healthy. His decision-making has not been good over this last 4-game stretch when they've lost all 4 of those games. Why not put the young guy in, right? I've heard he's looked really good throughout training camp and practice. We know he can spin the football. And then when you look at it, I think coming down the stretch, they have games against lesser opponents. Again, you respect everybody in the NFL, but I think they have games against the Raiders coming up and the Giants, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So those would be the reasons why I would put Michael Penix Jr. in, right? Because right now, the way things are going on offense, it looks like the season could be lost when you had a 3-game commanding lead in the division and you allowed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who haven't been healthy, to walk you down. So right now, I do see the Bucs winning this division because it has been abysmal on offense for the Falcons over the last 4 games.
I completely agree with you about turning the keys over to Michael Penix Jr. because we got a good litmus test last 3 games of what they look like against playoff teams, and it's completely overmatched right now. So even if they do manage to sneak in somehow, they ain't going far come playoff time. Michael Penix Jr., now he's a rookie, whatever. It's late in the season. No telling that he'll be better, but at least he can open up the offense. At least he has the arm strength to push the ball down the football field right now that Kirk Cousins simply does not.
What do you think is going into the decision-making on not going to him?
Well, one, obviously the money that they're paying Kirk Cousins, and then also, me and Mike were actually talking about this yesterday on Pushing the Pile. When you look at the schedule potentially coming up, it lightens up, right? Now, Kirk Cousins, due respect, he was playing some of the top defenses in all football, but that's the NFL, right? We paid you $100 million to win those games, right? And when you look at the remaining schedule, they have games against, I talked about it, the Raiders, the Giants, Commanders are going to be tough, and even the Panthers are going to be tough. And if you look at the Bucs schedule, besides that Chargers game, and the Cowboys are starting to play better, it looks like an easier schedule for the Tampa Bay Bucs, and they're getting healthy at the right time. So when you look at Kirk Cousins, what I did love was on that first drive, they got him back under center. He's always been one of the best play-action passers in all of football, and Bijan Robinson ran the ball really well on the inside zone, and that's how you were able to threaten the middle of the field with heavy play action. You're able to run the football. But after that first drive, it was just like, Kirk Cousins disappeared. The Kirk Cousins that we're accustomed to reverted back to the guy that we've seen the last 3 games with the decision making. I mean, that interception to Josh Metellus was god awful. He pump faked the ball, looked at him, and still decided to throw it right to him anyway. Then he had an overthrow on an interception, which was a really good play by Byron Murphy on a one-hand interception, but he just has not played up to the standard that we're accustomed to seeing Kirk Cousins.
So really quickly, just to confirm, even if they're in a tight race, which they are with the Bucs, you guys would rather trust Michael Penix Jr. than Kirk Cousins down the stretch.
I don't know if it's about trust.
Correct.
It's more just about the upside.
Just throwing, yeah.
At this point, there's really no upside for Kirk Cousins unless you somehow face the Bucs in the playoffs, which you can't, because he's the only team that he seems to care about.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about the Rams. A whole lot of points that were in that game against the Bills. And Leisha, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, you were one of the analysts that said, hey, I feel like this might be an upset for the Bills. We talked about it.
I tried to tell people, man.
I know. I was like getting deja vu as I'm watching this game go down. But Mike, I'll start with you. What did you learn about this Rams team in this game where Josh Allen had a historic game and it didn't matter ultimately in the end?
It's that no one really wants to face this offense come playoff time. It truly is. It's that they have the horses on the outside to put points on anybody. And now, the early season, I think people remember that team, and it's just a completely different team. They didn't have Cooper Kupp. They didn't have Puka Nacua. They didn't have half their offensive line.
Correct.
And so everything now, the team we thought had aspirations to be a Super Bowl contender early on before all those injuries struck, well, that team's back, and they look like what everyone thought they were going to be going into the season.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so I do think that this offense, and they haven't even gotten Tyler Higbee back, their tight end. Once that's the case, they can put up points on anybody.
That's the thing. Sean McVay is the best play caller in football. I don't even think it's up for debate now. Kyle Shanahan, KOC, Kevin O'Connor are probably a close second. But the way McVay is able to attack defenses and the way that Matthew Stafford is playing in these last 4 games, and you have to liken that to having his 2 top targets back, right? Yeah. When in the first 9 games, he didn't have Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp together. Like either one was missing or both were missing. Right now, he's had them for 4 straight games, and you see the numbers reflect that. I mean, he was throwing the leather off the pigskin yesterday, whether it was heavy play action pass or whether they got him on the edge in bootleg situations as well. Kyron Williams in the first half owned the Buffalo Bills, running that physical style of running. And that's what Sean McVay wants to do. He wants to have a physical run style. That way he can heavy play action pass you with that short motion, make you think, and then hit you with the screen for a touchdown. He's just a really good play caller. And to Mike's point, people forgot they were beat up in the beginning of the year, not just at the receiver position, the O-line. Like four out of the 5 weren't starting for them. Now everybody's back, and they're starting to gel on the offensive line. This is a team right now that nobody wants to see if they get into the playoffs.
Yeah, yesterday against the Bills, 8 pressures on Matt Stafford all day long. The fewest of any game this year. It's like that's how you win football games, the Los Angeles Rams.
Well, this NFC West is one of the most wide open divisions right now in the NFL. 49ers, Rams both coming off wins, as we know, in Week 14. But who do you have more confidence in as we get in making a run, the Niners or the Rams, Mike?
Gosh, I think the Rams at this point, just because they're healthier. I mean, the 49ers are just guys aren't walking through that door that are critical pieces to that team, whether it's Brandon Ayuk, whether it's Christian McCaffrey, whether it's probably Nick Bosa on the defensive side of the ball. They're not the Super Bowl team. When you lose that many guys who are that critical, when you are the stars and scrubs sort of team building where you need those highly paid guys to play like it, I don't think they're going to come back down the stretch here.
Yeah, to me, when you're talking about the 49ers and Cardinals, it has to be the 49ers, right?
Oh, shoot.
Because when you look at what Kyler Murray has done the last few games, right? Troublesome decision making, especially in that first half versus the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, both of those interceptions were god awful. He was staring the receiver down, and Ernest Jones literally just stepped in front of the pass for an interception. And then the next one, right? He was late going out to the left side. He rolls out to his left, and he throws it late. And then Kobe Bryant just undercuts it and gets an interception. So I don't like the decision making that I've seen from the Cardinals. And also, when you look at it, I think the talent deficiency is finally starting to show up for this team. Right? They struggle getting after the passer. They don't have great playmakers on offense. Now, Trey McBride has had a heck of a year, right? And Marvin Harrison in spots has looked really good. James Conner has run the ball effectively. But I think from the quarterback position, when you look at the 49ers and Cardinals, I trust Brock Purdy more. And it seems like he's getting healthy again. Now, he did get banged up in that game. But we saw yesterday when that offense is whole, and they don't even have Brandon Ayuk, but still, with Jawan Jennings, with also George Kittle, with Deebo Samuel, like that's a well-balanced breakfast. That's a hard offense to contend with. And even though they've been hurt on defense with Bosa being out, like other guys have stepped up. Leonard Floyd, Malik Collins, Gross Matos had 3 sacks yesterday. So, like, this is a team because of pedigree I trust more in the 49ers. They just have a gauntlet of a schedule down the stretch.
All right, we'll leave it there. You can hear more from the guys and on the Pushing the Pile podcast. Scan that QR code on your screen and download and listen wherever you get your podcasts. Jay and Mike here on CBS Sports HQ to talk the NFL playoff picture as it comes more into focus.